I've always loved traveling. Some people collect photos. Some collect souvenirs. But I collect places. New cities. New countries. New roads that lead to somewhere no one talks about. Ever since I was a kid, I had one dream: to see the world. By the time I turned 26, I had already visited 14 countries. Mountains in Nepal, quiet villages in Japan, deserts in Morocco, small coastal towns in Portugal where nobody spoke English. Traveling was the only thing that made me feel alive. But there was one trip I had always wanted to take. A place I kept seeing online. A tiny village hidden deep in the mountains of Eastern Europe. Almost nobody talked about it. There were barely any photos. No tourist guides. Just a few strange travel blogs mentioning it. They all said the same thing. It's beautiful, but strange. That was enough for me. 3 months ago, I finally booked the trip. It would be my longest journey yet. 2 flights, 1 train, and a 6-hour bus ride into the mountains. My friends thought it sounded amazing, but my mother didn't like the idea. She kept asking the same question. Why do you always travel to places no one goes? I laughed it off. Because that's where the real stories are. If I had known what kind of story waited for me there, I would have never gone. The first part of the trip went smoothly. The flights were normal. The train ride through the mountains was beautiful. Endless forests and fog covering the hills. But things started feeling strange during the bus ride. The bus was old, very old. The kind that rattled every time it hit a bump. There were only 4 passengers inside. An old man, a woman holding a sleeping child, a man in the back seat wearing a long coat, and me. The road slowly became narrower as we climbed higher into the mountains. The sky outside was turning dark. Fog rolled across the road in thick waves. The driver hadn't said a single word since we started the trip. Not even when people boarded. About 2 hours into the ride, the old man sitting across the aisle leaned toward me. He looked like he was in his 70s. Deep wrinkles across his face. Gray beard. Tired eyes. He spoke very quietly. "Where are you going?" I told him the name of the village. The one from the travel blogs. The old man's expression immediately changed. His face became pale. For a moment he just stared at me. Then he shook his head slowly. "That village," he whispered. "You shouldn't go there." I smiled politely. "Why not?" The old man looked toward the bus driver, then toward the fog outside the window, and then back at me. "You're not the first traveler who went there." He paused. "And none of them ever came back." For a moment I thought he was joking. Some kind of local legend. But he didn't smile. Not even a little. Before I could ask anything else, the bus suddenly stopped. The driver turned around and looked directly at me. "You." His voice was low and rough. "This is your stop." I looked out the window, but there was nothing outside. No village, no lights, just fog. Thick fog covering the empty mountain road. "I think there's a mistake," I said. "My stop should be the village." The driver didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at me. "This is the last stop." The old man beside me whispered something under his breath. I couldn't understand the words, but his voice sounded nervous. Slowly, I grabbed my backpack and stepped off the bus. The cold mountain air hit my face instantly. The fog swallowed everything around me. The road behind the bus disappeared into darkness. Before I could say anything, the doors shut, and the bus drove away, leaving me alone, in the middle of nowhere, with only one narrow road leading into the forest. I pulled out my phone to check the map, but there was no signal, no internet, just an empty blue dot showing my location, and one small name on the map, the village, just 3 kilometers ahead. I sighed and started walking. At first everything was quiet, too quiet, no birds, no wind, nothing. Then after about 10 minutes of walking, I saw something in the fog ahead, a wooden sign beside the road. I walked closer and wiped the dirt off the faded letters. It was the name of the village, but underneath the name, someone had carved another message into the wood. Deep scratches cut into the surface. 3 words, "Last trip here." I stood there for a moment staring at the wooden sign. Last trip here. The words looked old, like they had been carved years ago. Maybe it was just a warning. Maybe a joke from locals trying to scare travelers. I told myself not to overthink it. Still, something about the empty road made me uneasy. I adjusted my backpack and continued walking toward the village. The fog became thicker as I moved deeper into the forest. Tall trees surrounded the road on both sides. Their branches twisted together above me, blocking most of the moonlight. The only sound was the crunch of gravel beneath my shoes. After about 15 minutes, I finally saw something ahead. Dim lights glowing through the fog. Buildings. The village. Relief washed over me. I had started to think I was lost. As I got closer, the fog slowly cleared. Small wooden houses lined the narrow road. Most of them looked extremely old. Paint peeling, windows cracked, roofs sagging slightly under the weight of time. But something strange stood out immediately. Every house had its lights on, yet the village was completely silent. No voices, no music, no footsteps, nothing. I walked slowly down the road. "Hello," I called out. My voice echoed faintly between the buildings. No one answered. I checked my phone again. Still no signal. That's when I noticed something else. Every house had its curtains closed, tightly closed, like the people inside didn't want to be seen. A cold breeze passed through the empty street. The wooden doors creaked slightly in the wind. I walked past a small grocery store. The sign above the door hung crookedly. The lights inside were on. But when I looked through the window, the store was empty. No customers, no cashier, just dusty shelves filled with old food packages. It looked like the place had been abandoned, but the lights were still running. That didn't make sense. I continued walking deeper into the village. Then I saw something that made me stop. Footprints. Fresh footprints in the dirt road. But they were strange. They all went in the same direction, toward the center of the village. And there were a lot of them. Dozens. Maybe even hundreds. Like everyone in the village had walked there at the same time. I followed the footprints down the road. Eventually the houses opened into a large square in the middle of the village. And that's when I saw them. People. Standing in the center of the square. At least 20 villagers. Men, women, elderly people. All standing perfectly still. Facing the same direction. My first thought was that some kind of event was happening. Maybe a ceremony. Maybe a festival. I walked closer. "Excuse me," I said. None of them moved. None of them even looked at me. They were all staring at something in the middle of the square. A large stone well. Old, cracked, covered in moss. Slowly, I stepped closer to the crowd. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. Because none of the villagers were talking. None of them were blinking. They were just standing there, silent, watching the well. Finally, I tapped the shoulder of the man closest to me. He didn't react, not even a little. His skin felt cold, and his eyes looked completely empty, like he hadn't slept in days. Then suddenly, a deep sound echoed from inside the well, a low rumbling noise, like something moving far below the ground. The villagers all leaned forward at the same time, perfectly synchronized, still silent, still staring into the darkness. And then, very slowly, something inside the well started climbing upward. The sound coming from the well grew louder, a deep scraping noise, like something dragging itself against the stone walls inside. The villagers didn't move. They just stood there, leaning forward slightly, watching, waiting. I stepped closer to the edge of the well. My heart was beating so fast it almost hurt. "Hello," I called nervously. My voice sounded small in the silent square. No one answered. The scraping sound stopped. For a moment, everything was completely quiet again. Then I heard something else. Breathing. Slow, heavy breathing, coming from deep inside the well. I took a step back. Something about that sound felt wrong. Too human, but also not human at all. Then suddenly a hand appeared. A pale hand grabbed the edge of the well. The fingers looked thin and weak, covered in dirt. Someone was climbing out. The villagers leaned even closer, still silent, still watching. Slowly, a man pulled himself up from the darkness. His clothes were torn. His face was pale. His eyes looked terrified. The moment he climbed out, he collapsed onto the ground. He looked around desperately. Then he saw me. You're not from here," he gasped. I shook my head. "I just arrived." His face turned even paler. "You need to leave," he whispered. "Right now." Before I could respond, one of the villagers suddenly stepped forward. An old woman with long gray hair. She looked down at the man on the ground. "You came back," she said softly. Her voice sounded calm. Too calm. The man began crawling away from her. "You said you'd let me go." The woman tilted her head slightly. "And we did." She pointed toward the road behind me. "You traveled." The villagers slowly began turning their heads, one by one, until they were all looking at me. Their empty eyes locked onto my face. The man on the ground grabbed my arm. "Listen to me," he whispered quickly. "I was a traveler like you. I came here 2 years ago." My stomach dropped. "You mean you were stuck in the well for 2 years?" He shook his head weakly. "No, they let travelers leave the village." He pointed toward the well. "But the road always brings us back." Cold fear spread through my chest. "That doesn't make sense." The man laughed quietly, a broken, tired laugh. "It will soon." Then he looked directly into my eyes. "Every traveler who comes here eventually returns. Always through the well." I turned toward the stone well again. My heart sank when I noticed something carved into the stone. Names. Hundreds of names scratched into the surface. Different languages. Different alphabets. All travelers. And near the bottom, a space that looked newly carved. An empty space, just big enough for another name. My phone buzzed suddenly in my pocket. I pulled it out. For the first time since arriving in the mountains, I had signal. One notification appeared on the screen. A travel app message. Trip completed. Another message appeared immediately after. Return journey scheduled. And then, from inside the well, I heard something moving again. But this time, it sounded like something coming up for me. The sound inside the well grew louder, Stone scraped against stone. Something was climbing up again. But this time, it sounded faster. The man beside me grabbed my arm tightly. "They're coming," he whispered. "Who?" I asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he looked toward the villagers. They were all staring at me now. Every single one of them, their faces blank, emotionless, like they had been waiting for this moment. The old woman stepped closer. "You've seen the well," she said quietly. "You've seen the travelers." Then she smiled slightly. "Now your journey can begin." My stomach twisted. "What are you talking about?" The man beside me pulled himself up and pointed at the well again. "Look," he said weakly. I stepped closer to the edge. The darkness inside the well seemed endless. But then I saw movement. Someone was climbing out. Slowly, very slowly. A hand appeared first, then another, and then a face. But the moment the figure looked up at me, my heart stopped, because the face climbing out of the well was mine. Same jacket, same backpack, same terrified expression. I stumbled backward. "That's not possible," I whispered. The villagers didn't react. They just watched. The second version of me slowly climbed out of the well and stood on the ground. Its movements were stiff, unnatural, like it was learning how to move. Then it looked directly at me and smiled. "You traveled far," it said calmly. His voice sounded exactly like mine. "But every trip ends somewhere." The man beside me started shaking his head. "This is how they do it," he said. "They replace us. Then we become part of the road." My mind raced. "What road?" The man pointed toward the forest behind the village. "The one that leads the next traveler here." Suddenly I understood. The road, the fog, the bus driver, the warning sign. This place wasn't a village. It was a trap, a place where travelers disappeared, and something else took their place. The other version of me took a step closer, then another. "You don't need to travel anymore," it said softly. "You've reached your final destination." The villagers slowly stepped forward, forming a circle around me. The man who had climbed out earlier grabbed my arm one last time. "Run," he whispered. So I did. I turned and sprinted down the empty road, past the houses, past the broken store, into the fog-covered forest. Branches scraped my arms as I ran. My lungs burned, but I didn't stop. After several minutes, I finally reached the road where the bus had dropped me. And to my shock, a bus was already there, its headlights glowing through the fog. The door opened slowly. The driver leaned out and looked at me. "Heading back?" he asked. I didn't hesitate. I ran onto the bus and collapsed into the nearest seat. The doors closed. The bus started moving down the mountain road. For the first time since arriving, I felt safe. But after a few minutes, something strange caught my attention. The bus windows were reflecting the passengers. But there was only one reflection behind me, even though I could clearly hear breathing in the back seat. Slow breathing, very close. I slowly turned my head, and sitting directly behind me was the other version of me, still smiling. And outside the bus window, through the fog, I saw the wooden road sign again, the one near the forest, the one I passed earlier. But this time, there was a new message carved underneath. Fresh scratches in the wood. For words, another traveler returned.